Okay, so thank you for inviting me to this interesting session. I didn't get the chance to listen to all the talks, but several of them, and it's a fascinating topic, and the insights that I gleaned from them were great. I should emphasize I'm not an expert in the sense that I haven't worked on these topics myself, but I have followed some of the discussion as many other people have done. So it's somewhat of a layman's view, but hopefully something that you will find of interest. So let me start with some of the takeaways from the papers or the presentations as I read them or listened to them. And my general sense is that this discussion about privacy in some sense is fading away. Partly, that is, the concerns about individual privacy in most instances are being solved, either because actually individuals are not that concerned, as Bengt, for instance, indicated through his book, interesting book, that on the privacy paradox. You know, we don't have a good answer of why there is this paradox, but it suggests to me at least that on the whole, and as I recall from my visit to Hanghzou or visits to Hanghzou, that it has been declining. The concern has been declining on consumers, and it's sort of a drop in the bucket in the end. And we have all experienced just clicking, yes on these questionnaires that pop up, and so I think that has been. That's something that we all will get adjusted to, just like as we have gotten adjusted, the newspapers can write about you or they can mention your name. They don't have to request a right to write about you, but as the report that Long produced and co-authors produced, you go for the ex post. If you insult people or you do something wrong about it, then you have to pay exposed, but this strict, screening in advance seems to me somewhat annoying and as people said, also something that could be very expensive for small firms. Government, let's just go back. I mean, information is nothing new. We deal all the time with the problems of information. It's just on a different scale now when we are digital, but we government in many cases serve as a representative for individuals in the traditional information world. And so it's strange to ask, for millions and millions of individuals to click these buttons when in fact, sometimes at least, the governments could decide what should and should not be appropriate. Now I'm going to come back to that just in a moment, in that, it depends on what context we are talking about, but I'm thinking mainly about the platforms that Alibaba has and so on, and they have also, of course, an incentive to create rules of the game such that that people want to be on the platform. Finally, we have made great strides, of course, in the desensitizing information and the sort of PET, privacy enhancing technology, anonymity and various ways of preventing people for inferring individual facts and individual data. And I think we are going to see big advances in those areas also. So the bottom line is that I think this sort of initial GDPR-focused worries seem to me a little overblown. So that's point number one. The second point is that I think, as has been surfacing in this discussion earlier here, we really need to look at different categories of data. Consumer search is one category. Financial, information dealing with payment systems, dealing with bank secrecy, and so on. I mean, those are already, as it were, very advanced. And obviously you need a lot of protection in those. And I don't see that that's not happening. It seems to me that the old models serve at least as a very good starting point for protecting those data. On the other hand, then one thing that I find concerning is, the critical view of health. That is, in health issues, I understand people want to protect their data, but with these pet technologies, it seems to me that we really also need to be able to decentralize the data, or do it in aggregate in a manner that we can take advantage of the tremendous value in data for such things as overall health issues. I don't see that I own my data with regard to health necessarily, at least to the extent that some people seem to think. So that's a personal view. I feel like it's my obligation to let my data be serving the usefulness for society at large and for research and so on. And so, but that's not for me to decide. But that certainly should not be treated under the same roof of, say, consumer search or something like that. And there's also the question of sort of multi-sourcing data and so on. I won't take up that any further here. But I see the general point is I see a lot of advances being made. I think stuff has become more sensible. It seems there was some kind of hysteria initially about it. It's still there. But I think it's going to fade away, and we are going to see much more efficient sort of balance between usefulness or tremendous usefulness data on one hand, and then concerns about privacy on the other hand, and that's a great trade-off. That's a great trade-off that we are facing here, of course. So a few words on European Union, these three countries. European Union is not a country. It's important to understand. So it's in that sense in a challenged position. But EU, US, China, they all three have somewhat different approaches, as Long's report, makes clear. It's interesting to see US, not surprisingly, let sort of 1,000 flowers bloom and let competition take care of it, let markets take care of it. It's the philosophy that US has had. It seems on certain dimensions, such as payment systems, it seems like US is in a total chaotic state with tens and tens of different ways of paying when you go to the store but I think that's traditional for US. When a new thing starts, they look like they don't know what they are doing. But suddenly out of it emerges eventually a sort of a leadership or a consensus or something like that. Think about mobile phones, for instance. The Europe regulated from the beginning with the GSM and so on. It looked great. Nokia and Ericsson and other European companies were sort of in the lead. And I followed it closely. I was on the board of Nokia. And then suddenly out of this totally chaotic United States with many different, formats and protocols, emerged iPhone out of almost nowhere. And suddenly the rest is sort of history. So you see something similar can happen in the payment system with the US, but it's not guaranteed that way. But I'm just giving an example that this is part for US to go forward in this manner. I think EU with its GDPR I think it sort of thinks it's taking the high moral ground, but as I already said, in most instances, I don't think it's as relevant as they think. And I think it may, I would rather take I would take more of the position of thinking it in terms of what this means for competition. I thought Doug Bergman's comments were excellent in that sense. It's basically said that, the or I read it to say that, this is really what we should focus on. How does digitalization affect competition? And we need a completely different, perhaps, set of antitrust regulation and so on. And I don't see that the GDPR does anything for Europe in this respect. They are very proud of it. I think it's way too uniform, and it doesn't differentiate sufficiently, but maybe time will make it different. I think fundamentally it is about keeping out, the big companies, or somewhat at least keeping out the big companies from the United States and possibly from China. So I'm most worried about European Union. They don't have a single platform company of name. They have had some startups, but they have been sold out. I think EU really would need to take a close look at what they are doing and be more pragmatic and not look at these things from some principled moral ground, because I think that's not that warranted. So that's my comment on you. China is interesting because China was very early in this game through Alibaba and Tencent and others. I mean, China is enormously competitive. At least when I used to go there to the Law and Academy meetings, and I mean, it's astonishing. And so it's more competitive than the US in the sense that they holistically compete, in the sense there are several big ecosystem companies and some new ones coming along and so on. So China used to be very healthy in that sense. I don't know what's happening there right now, but it's interesting that in the report, Long is describing that China is sort of looking for focusing on getting the market into play and activating the market so that people can share in the information. And we'll see how that goes, but that seems to me a sensible and healthy direction to go. I think one of the interesting aspects that haven't been really mentioned, or I didn't hear much, is an emerging perhaps competition between EU, US and China with regard to what kind of data they can source for these AI technologies. Very little was talked about the AI, but AI to me is obviously a very big new issue on this scene of privacy and so on. And I think it's not just privacy; it's just this is sort of data is gold. And it's understandable that EU, for instance, wouldn't want to let the United States big companies freely sort of make use of their data, and so I think that's going to be an interesting aspect to study or understand, because it is tremendous value, and there's a question, why should one give it away to other companies or other competitors, if you wish. Now, I know that sounds like a trade competition or something like that, but I think that's going to be a more and more important issue. Who has access to the data? I mean, Google and Apple and these guys are paying big money now just to get access to, say, news data and other such data. So there's a lot of value, obviously, there. Let me finally bring up one issue that is sort of only tangential, it may seem, to what you have been discussing, which is the AI and sort of what it means for quality of life. Perhaps because I'm getting older, I'm starting to think more about these sort of philosophical issues, and so economics is not everything. It's actually there's a lot of dimensions we know, that such as climate, such as community, various kinds of things that don't get measured, that has tremendous value for us, but they don't get measured in GDP or not even in adjusted GDP. So I would say that one of the issues, and Darren Asimov and Simon Johnson just wrote a book about, the power. There is a big concern about how this new technology, in what direction it's sort of moving, and how it's moving there. And take just a simple example when you think about it, I'm worried especially about jobs becoming very mechanical. It's sort of almost like Taylorism from long ago. If you think about Uber drivers, I mean, they basically just read what the screen says and then they turn their wheels accordingly. And it's going to be a small step when the technology is there to just go to self-driving cars. And that may be all good, but there's a lot of other jobs where sort of the people's sort of inspiration to solve problems in the small, even, plumbers figuring out how to solve a problem or something like that. I think it's in our DNA to really enjoy that kind of work. That gives meaning. That gives meaning to what we do, is that we are being able to solve problems. We have, it's almost like thinking, I mean, we have been solving problems all our lives, small problems. And I think the current environment where all the small problems get handed over to AI or whatever other technological devices that come up, I think I am actually concerned that that's taking away a lot of sort of value that doesn't at all get measured. The pleasure of solving problems is actually one dimension that's very little talked about, and it's true that there's a lot of value in just making routine jobs really routine and take them away from people. But I actually believe routine jobs also have a lot of variations. No job is really that boring if one really gets into it. And so I just wanted to bring that up as a very different dimension related to these questions about what does digital technology do to our life, quality of life, and so on. And the last final thing is technology. Digital technology will actually be able to measure and probably solve problems related to climate change and such things. So this is a correction to what GDP measures, and Eric Brunson at Stanford has been working on this, and others have been working on. So AI has that ability also to solve some of these biased measures of value that comes up in looking at the quality of life. So I'm fundamentally a techno optimist, and I think these problems that we are talking about need to be addressed the way you have done here, but I'm not that pessimistic about the outlook. So thank you very much.